So Trump thought he was cornering Canada. He weaponized tariffs, threatened annexation, belittled the relationship at every turn. And Canada's response? Well, Canadians didn't march, they didn't hold press conferences, they just stopped showing up. And when 20 million people quietly stopped crossing the border, $20.5 billion disappears with them. That's not a protest, that's an execution.
And this is the part Washington still hasn't processed. Trump didn't just damage a trade relationship. He convinced an entire country that the America he created was somewhere they didn't want to spend their money. So we're going to show you exactly what that's costing, why it can't be walked back, and what it means for every pressure Trump is still trying to apply to Canada.
Yeah, this is a story of how Canada stopped being a customer and started being a consequence.
Let's start with what the data actually shows. In March 2026, return trips from the U.S. fell yet again. Since Trump returned to office, Canadian travel south is down by as much as a third.
Wow. And to understand why that number is catastrophic for the U.S., you need to understand the scale of what Canada was. In 2024, Canada was America's single largest international tourism market. 20.4 million visits, $20.5 billion in direct spending, and 140,000 American jobs directly tied to Canadians showing up.
The U.S. Travel Association issued a warning in 2025 that even a 10% drop in Canadian travel would trigger billions in lost spending and thousands of lost jobs. Well, we're now past 30%, so this isn't just a 10% warning scenario. This is the unthinkable scenario.
And then the CEPR, which is the Center for Economic Policy Research, released findings tracking what happened in U.S. regions most economically exposed to Canadian visitors. By mid-2025, those businesses were employing roughly 6% fewer workers than comparable business in less exposed areas.
6% across an entire regional economy? Well, that's a lot, and that's just because of a tourism decision by individuals in Canada.
Duty-free operators along the border said revenues at some locations are down 40 to 50%. The crossing numbers have collapsed. Niagara Falls on the American side, Buffalo, Detroit, Bellingham, these are cities whose economic models were built on Canadians showing up. And right now, Canadians just aren't.
Now, here's what gets lost in the pure economic story, and this is the critical part.
Yeah, what actually changed?
It isn't about price. Canadians aren't avoiding the U.S. because flights got more expensive or hotels got pricier. They're making a conscious decision about where the money reflects what they believe. That is a fundamentally different calculation than a cost decision or prices being too high.
Yeah, and it matters because a cost decision can be reversed. A good deal comes along, the math changes, people go back. A values decision, a decision rooted in identity, in what a place stands for, that doesn't reverse when the sale ends.
So the issue isn't a package price, the issue is trust. And Trump and his cronies, they broke all that trust.
He turned a friendly relationship into a loyalty test, and Canadians failed it on purpose. They looked at what he was doing, the threats, the tariffs, the mockery of the relationship, and decided that America under those conditions was somewhere they didn't want to leave their money.
What's actually happening here is bigger than a boycott, too. Even though Forbes said that this is one of the most successful boycotts in history. For decades, the U.S. was Canada's automatic default. They were our neighbor. We liked them. And those choices, well, hey, they were on autopilot.
That autopilot is breaking down or almost gone. And when a default breaks, when an automatic assumption gets replaced by a conscious choice, it doesn't just mean people pick something different this time. It means the entire mental model shifts.
Canada is becoming a country that looks south and sees a destination it has to consciously choose rather than one it automatically gravitates towards. The shift takes years to undo, if it undoes at all.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop at tourism. You see it first in travel because that's immediate, but it eventually starts to show up in business decisions, partnerships, even where Canadians choose to invest their time and money.
So what we're watching is Canada decoupling from the United States in the quiet, precise, methodical way that tends to be permanent.
And this is the response that Trump, he doesn't know how to fight. He's built his entire political brand on spectacle, on loud confrontation. Canada, we're answering with kind of silence. And the economic damage is just as real.
But there's one detail in this story that tells you exactly where the Canadian political mood is right now, and I don't like it.
No, it's Justin Trudeau. While Canada is going through a real national shift, while Canadians are making conscious decisions about their relationship with the U.S., Trudeau is being photographed at Coachella, skiing with Prince Harry, and popping up at Netflix parties in California.
So, okay, he is a private citizen and he can do what he wants, but the optics are awful. Canadians are drawing a line, and the former prime minister who led this country for 9 years and faced this crisis at the beginning, staring down Trump and telling us to fight back, well, he looks like he's on a social tour through the very country that people are pushing back against.
And that's why this lands the way that it does. People stood by it. They supported him through some really rough moments. So seeing this now, while Canadians are deliberately pulling back from the U.S. and standing their ground, it feels disconnected at best and honestly, a little disrespectful.
Canadians are getting more serious about who we are and how we show up in the world. And maybe Justin just doesn't get it. But this is why the optics feel so out of step.
And that brings us straight to Mark Carney, the right guy for the moment. Canada didn't just elect a different prime minister, it elected a signal. A statement about what kind of country it wants to be right now. Serious, sovereign, not looking south for approval.
And that's why he has a majority government and has attracted already 5 floor crossings with the possibility of 8 more on the way.
So the travel data, the economic data, and the political data, they're all pointing in the same direction. Canada isn't drifted. It's choosing a different path.
And here's what this different path actually means strategically. Trump's campaign was designed to inflict economic pain on Canada and force concessions. What it actually triggered was a civilian-led economic withdrawal that Canada's government didn't even have to organize, because 20 million Canadians organized it all themselves.
Yeah, and that's remarkable when you really think about it. No government mandate, no formal boycott declaration, no coordinated campaign. Individual Canadians made individual decisions, and those decisions aggregated into something with economic force of deliberate policy. 140,000 American jobs, $20.5 billion in spending, and a 30+% drop in the most reliable international tourism market the United States ever had.
And here's the strategic reality that matters most. This is extraordinarily difficult to reverse. You can negotiate a tariff, you can sign a new trade agreement, but you cannot negotiate away the emotional and cultural reposition of an entire population of our country.
Trump has no lever for this. This isn't a concession that he can demand at a table when he's negotiating CUSMA. This is a national mood shift.
Now, we want to mention that Canada, we're not pretending that this doesn't come at a cost. It does. But what Canadians are showing right now is that we're willing to absorb some pain to stand our ground. People will tolerate short-term discomfort if they believe it protects something bigger.
Listen, cross-border commerce flows both ways, and this has real costs on our side as well. But what Canada is demonstrating to the world, not to just Washington, is that a middle power with a clear national identity can absorb sustained pressure from the most powerful country on earth and redirect it.
So this isn't a story about Canada waiting to be rescued. This is Canada proving it doesn't need to be.
Yep, we're finding new trade partners, strengthening alliances, deepening ties through CETA and CPTPP, getting back into conversations with India and China. And Canadians themselves are redirecting billions in travel spending away from the U.S.
And the uncomfortable reality for Washington is that Canada isn't being pushed out, it's that the U.S. is being left behind.
So here's the question that we want you to weigh in on today.
Once Canada rebuilds its defaults away from the U.S., once the psychological repositioning happens at scale, does it reverse when Trump is gone? Or is this a generational realignment that outlasts him by decades?
Yep. Now drop your answer in the comments and tell us whether you think Canada goes back to the way things were before 2025 and what it would actually take for that to happen. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, you know we don't sugarcoat this stuff. Hit subscribe, share this one, and check out the links below or in the pinned comment for the fun stuff like our Substack, the A-Team, our private Facebook group, and our merch store.
Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Ciao for now.